Hi, this is Tom for PokerVIP.com and welcome to my second video on Pot Limit Omaha here at Winner. So this is a continuation of the first session. We did take a 3 or 4 minute break. In the process that the left-hand table broke, so we've just slotted in a 50 table. Literally sat down at it. We don't have any reads on anyone. We don't know about the history. We've never played any of these players before. We're going to fold to the min race here. Pretty disgusting, but with just second nuts and no redraws. The right-hand table, observant amongst you might see I've got a bit more money, flop the nut full, stack someone. They've now been replaced by BF numbers. He seems to be limping much like everyone else, so not really sure what to make of him. The 50 table, I have to imagine there's a difference in standard between 25 or 20 and 50. There is on just about every site. But as to what the difference in standard is, I don't know. That's very much going to be discovered as this video progresses. Seeing that there is at least one player who's limping under the gun, etc., I have to presume that the standard is still not perhaps as tough as it is on some other sites. But, I can very much be dissuaded of that opinion as the video goes on. With a nut flush, we'd be playing the ace, queen jack 3 pretty happily. Again, very much as we mentioned in the first video, when we don't have nut flushes, we're taking the hand multi-way. It diminishes in value fairly significantly. So, yeah. In general, like I would ideally be like to mixing in more 3-bets than I have been in the past sort of video. But that's reasonably difficult to do when so many hands are going multi-way, when so many hands are limped in front of you. You don't get the opportunity to 3-bet, you don't get to alter the SBR as readily as you would like. So it does sort of make that desire, somewhat difficult. Some would say impractical. A lot of limping in this 50 game already, which I'm reasonably surprised by, but I've seen it before. It's not something I see in the games that I would play, regularly. But that's not to say that it doesn't happen on other sites. Quite possible that a number of you watching this, it's very normal for it to happen. I know it happens a lot live, so could well just be an extension of that, perhaps. Again, when we're facing so many limps, pots going multi-way, it does mean that we're going to have to be constructing different ranges than we would do sort of typically. In an ordinary kind of against a standard player, I have a very good idea of what what a cutoff range should represent, what he should have, etc. But when ranges are so much wider, it does mean that that preconception gets challenged somewhat. And as such, I've got to make adjustments and really widen it, and also consider what implications that can have on a value range that I should be betting, and also how effective bluffs will be, what equity happens to be in certain spots, how effective a blocker bluff's going to be, for example, if people are calling down very readily with 2-pair, etc. So these are all adjustments that I'm going to have to be making in this video and the previous one. Hopefully most of you have watched before you're watching this one. And if you find yourself in a game similar to this, then those are adjustments that you should be making also. We'd be raising this in cutoff, etc. But under the gun, a little too loose. So yeah, just general adjustments like that. Just reacting to the game flow, the dynamic, the players you're playing is absolutely critical in just about any form of poker, not unique to Pot Limit Omaha. On the left-hand table, that's a board that actually is a very dynamic and interesting board. It actually shouldn't favour the pre-flop raiser too readily. As I say, how dynamic and interesting it is, it's somehow getting min-bet. When it's folded around to us on the right-hand table, we are going to raise. We do also have a little post with a little bit of dead money in it. Was hoping to steal the button, hasn't happened. This may be one of these instances where I've raised cutoff and managed to get 3 calls from the 3 players behind me, which, again, I would literally find laughable in normal games, but it doesn't seem to be that uncommon in this scenario. Min raise again, it's not good. Just trying to find a positive way to talk about it, and there isn't one. We're just going to be checking back our weak flusher. Into one player, we certainly can be betting here, repping King X, but into two, a little awkward, especially given what the small blind has stack size wise. Turn the 10-9-7 draw. I have to believe no one is actually full at this point. We are going to take a shot at it. There are occasions that I would consider checking King's full, checking a hand like 6x occasionally. When my opponent calls, it's a little iffy as to what I should do. I think we're just going to go small. He's never folding a 6. We're trying to fold out kings. We're trying to fold out random flush draws. And we get it through. Nice. Another one of these instances where we have 3 aces. Again, in an ordinary game, we would be isolating this. In a game such as this, where so much is going Morty way, these hands really benefit from the fold equity when people are playing somewhat standard linear ranges. When that's not happening, that fold equity evaporates and the strength of the hand does as well. Yes, in an ideal GTO theoretical scenario, I would be raising that. If it'd been raised in front, I would be 3-betting it. But this is not a scenario where a perfectly theoretical game is going to be the most profitable one. As annoying as it is to fold aces pre-flop. So we seem to have 2 serial limpers on the left-hand table. Both are the cats. Apologies if that flashed up on the video. I've been using Flux as a desktop lighting thing to sort of adjust to the natural light cycle. So if it flashed up on the video, that's all it is. I do think it's quite effective. It has, I think, been helping my game. It's been reducing eye strain, reducing glare. So if you haven't used it, yeah, it's worth a go. And if it doesn't agree with you, then don't use it. But it's something that I started using 3-4 months ago, and I think the results from it have been pretty good. Although you can't see in this video, I do wear glasses. I do wear contacts, so eye strain is something that comes with this job, and it is something that I am reasonably considerate of. Random 9s, pretty reasonable fold. The limping continues. Does seem to be fairly site-wide, fairly endemic. And the raises that are coming in the 50 table are not full raises. They're little min raises. They're not full pot, which I find very surprising, but again, generally indicates a weaker game. It's not getting the maximum amount of money you can in pre-flop, so it's not altering the stack to pot ratio as much as you can, and it is also incentivizing pots to go multi-way, more so than they already are. So it's something that, if you new to pot in Omaha, or you're experimenting with sizings, pre-flop sizings, just should be pot. It's pretty much agreed on now by just about everyone. You do see some people sort of raising the 2.5, the 2.3x on button, and it is very much sort of a transitional idea from Hold'em, and it does work in Hold'em, of course. That's why people do it. But the benefits you get from doing it in Hold'em just don't carry over to Omaha. The fold equity that you would have in Hold'em, you just don't have in Omaha, just because equities run that much closer pre-flop, so you really don't want to incentivize people to sort of call wider than they would do otherwise, unless your post-flop game is just so good that you can exploit that, which generally, if you have an edge, it's can sometimes be sizable, but it's not so sizable that you want to be surrendering that kind of edge pre-flop. The right-hand table, it's discounted. See what we can hit. Pair, backdoor flush draw, gut shot. It's a little bit of everything, but it's also a little bit of nothing. it's a hand I'm okay seeing a turn with if it's check round. There are ways we can improve. If money starts going in, the outs we have are, for the majority, non-nutted, with the exception of the gut shots V8. Our backdoor flush draw is not nutted. Our two pairs are not nutted. If we hit trips and that is the best hand, it suddenly becomes difficult for us to actually extract value from it. So yeah, it's, as I said, it's a little bit of something, a little bit of nothing. Given how wide he bet flop, I guess hindsight's 20/20, but ordinarily that would not be the case. We get a little min raise here. I don't think that we can make it enough to justify this. I mean, if we 4-bet this, SoCal is never folding. So I'm just going to be calling and taking position over the original raiser. Again, it looks somewhat weird, but I think it's more efficient than clicking, pot raising and suddenly loading SPR without really gaining anything. We bet once, just effectively to find out where we are. Our opponent certainly can have some sevens. We're going to put this in check call range. And we are going to use this hand as a bluff on turn on the right-hand table when check round. We have picked up equity anyway. Let me just check calling here. Oh, kings are good. Nice. Our opponent's going to show up with like 10-9-8 kind of hands. And yeah, I guess jacks are an okay call on the turn. I mean, in this game it probably is, to be fair. In an ordinary game, probably not. I mean, once I make the 6, I certainly can fire again, repping 10-8. That being said, a lot of the 10-8s are like jack 10-8, which they block with 2 of the jacks. I don't know if they're thinking about that, given what we know about them from the previous video. They don't seem keen on folding, so I'm kind of with the mindset of one and done unless I connect with it. You know, I could also, potentially hit the ace or king for value, and have the best hand. I just can't get value off it. But yeah, we're attempting just to squeeze a little more equity out of it by getting our 8-6 through without having to realize the equity. Once we don't improve, it's unfortunate, but it's still totally fine for us to just give up. There's a very, very, very slim chance that our third pair is good, but that's not the reason for checking. I just don't think we ever get it through. Ordinarily, I like completing in the small blind, but that hand is so trash that it's not even worth the extra 25 cents. We see a legitimate raise from somebody, albeit in a spot where a legitimate raise looks pretty crazy nutted and probably isn't getting value. That being said, given how wide these two are calling, maybe they will. I mean, who is to know? I probably can't tell after 12 minutes of playing with them. We're just going to be surrendering the button here. I mean, this hand is mediocre again. I mean, I don't really need to put money in. There's no real pressing reason to. Let's take a flop. Flopping jack 10 and flush draw. I'm just going to start betting it. If it's check round and we don't improve, we just surrender so much equity. So yeah, there's certainly going to be some turns where we don't enjoy the side off. It's kind of one of them. We're okay check calling now. Don't love the fact he's potted. We are calling, but it's not thrilling. I have 2 options on this river. I can either block a bet it or I can check call it. He is going to have some ace-high flushes, although they typically don't pot turn. My plan, I think, is to block a bet. We can obviously fold if he's raising, just because he basically raises the ace-high flush draw and nothing else. There are going to be times I can still get ace-king to call. There are going to be times that jack-high flushes, etc. call. So it's a bit of a combination blocker value bet, but I think it probably works better than checking just because I get paid more. And if I am facing a river bet, it's probably going to be potted. And by betting just slightly over half pot to fold, I actually save myself money versus, a pot size bet that I'm going to have to check call just about 100% of the time. Aces, out of position, I actually don't think there's a reason to ISO just because I'm going to end up taking the damn thing 3-way. I guess we lead. I am losing to Queen Jack. There are going to be still some flush draws. There are going to be some weird two pairs. I am blocking my own boat, which is semi-frustrating. Going to put this in check call range, allow him to bluff his flushes, bluff his two pairs. Best laid plans. I do have the blocker to the king high flush. That being said, I doubt a flush is giving up, given size of pot. He has been checking back quite often, so maybe he does again. He does, sweet. Basically, all the reasons I mentioned as to why I half potted with a king high flush to get called by weaker flushes are the reasons I'm not using the king high blocker as a bluff there, just because in this particular site I don't think that is going to work too frequently. It's something in a normal lineup where I think someone is competent and capable of folding, I would consider doing it. I don't think that is something that is necessarily going to have a higher success rate as I would anticipate in this particular site, in this particular game. I could be doing him a disservice, but that is the assumption I make, and unless I'm presented with evidence to the contrary, it's one I'm going to hold for a while. Albeit potentially a touch unfairly. Pretty trash hands on both tables. Both seem pretty reasonable to fold. I don't think either really needs much explanation as to why we're folding. PLO, no PLO, no party, which incidentally is an awesome screen name. Does seem to be playing somewhat standard. He's been just sitting back waiting for hands. He's now pot raising on buttons. So I'm going to imagine he's one of the more reggy type players from what I've seen. We'll see what he does post flop, but you know, given the manicness that seems to be going on with Pink Sipple, with Sokal, with Fever Tree, he seems to be the more balanced, the more standard, if there is such a thing on this site in these games. And just giving up when he doesn't have it's absolutely fine. He should have a pretty wide button open ranging range. He probably doesn't want to use range advantage too much against two people who don't fold. Perfectly reasonable conclusion to reach. It's one I would almost certainly reach in his situation. But I do love the screen name. Do love Andrea Pirlo. Legend, recently retired. So one of the things I'm a little jealous of, that on a number of sites I have different screen names other than Head and Heiny, and I'm never creative when it comes to a screen name. I'm never particularly I never have an epiphany as to what a good screen name is, basically. And I see something like that and you're like, there's just instant jealousy that somebody can come up with something so witty, and I sit there like entering my account details when I first sign up, sit there for 20 minutes and end up just going for Head and Heiny again because I can't think of anything. Decent sized pot on the left hand table if anyone wants it. Pot size from Sokal is going to be largely set, some 8-7s, occasionally like King, Queen, Jack with some clubsies. Interesting river. Backdoor clubs have arrived. I understand the strength of their hand, but chasing a non-nut out, I'm not an enormous fan of it, but that being said, I guess against this person, like any flush draw is probably nutted. They continue with the min raising, which, I mean, okay, it gets me to fold a small blind just because I'm out of position to everything, but in general, it's not going to get many folds and it's just going to blow the pot. I mean, min raising is basically going to accomplish exactly nothing. We're going to be checking on the right hand table. Flopping 2-pair gut shot, weak flush draw. If we had top 2, we'd probably be leading. Top and bottom, I'm more inclined to check call. Against the stack size, there's, I guess, an argument for check raising. Given Cleftico is almost certainly light and doesn't have anything. I mean, I guess against 30 big blinds, it's not terrible. It's also not brilliant, but I guess we'll just get it in. I'm never going to be terribly behind. Oh my god. All right, I don't know how he just called, but sure. Let's just put it in. There's going to be times I'm ahead. That is apparently one of those times, so sweet. If I thought he had aces, I wouldn't have hesitated in check raising. Not exactly the hand I was expecting to see, but hey, I'll take it. I'm never averse to winning money, so I don't understand why he didn't ISO raise the guy when the limp came in. But pair and NFD, I do unfortunately hold 3 diamonds. I guess check call's fine again. Leading's also got reasonable merits. I'm leading into 3 people. If I'm leading into fewer, then leading has more of an attraction to it. That is, yeah, that's random. Gazmas has capped range. Raising has some merit. That being said, if I get re-raised, I kind of throw up. I'm going to call and keep the weaker flush draws in. As turns go, that's probably the worst one I could have seen. Pretty much done with it now. It's unlikely that either player has no queen in hand, although check's incredibly random. I'm just going to put this in check call range. I don't think I get much value off anything. I protect myself against queen x, which granted is a little unlikely now, but still. Sweet. And we're going to 3-bet the aces. Would prefer they were suited, but see what comes of it. And opening button. That is a disappointing flop on the left-hand table. It's a flop that's going to hit the pre-flop caller far better than the pre-flop 3-better, barring the times I have like a flush draw with my overpair with my queen 10. Going to be betting our 2-pair here, which is pretty standard. We do have some gut shot outs, but it's not a spot I want to get particularly involved in. It's unfortunate that we flop as poorly as we do, but it'd be more unfortunate if we ended up doing a good chunk of money chasing negligible number of outs. Which can be fine. I mean, again, there's an argument for checking back here when we pick up a flush draw, but I think in this particular game format, it's absolutely fine to just continue. So, yeah, it's unfortunate what happened with the aces, but hey ho. Particularly interesting that SoCal actually folded there, which is very unusual, actually, given what a good price they had. Eights, it's going to be folding versus under the gun. Kind of sucks, but it's also not especially nutted. I mean, obviously I make the discipline fold and get top set, but let's not be results orientated, as I struggle not to bang my head against the table. Oh well, it's definitely the right fold pre. It's just kind of annoying and frustrating. Sort of, it's like the game show. Here's what you could have won. But if you thought about it in those terms, your poker game would deteriorate somewhat rapidly. Folding 2 trashy hands again. Not much really needs to be said about either. They're both poor. I was about to say something much worse, but realised swearing is probably not something I should be doing on this video. Not as a premeditated thing, anyway. So yeah, the 50 game, I mean, we're down a couple of euros, nothing much. Had one good spot, I guess you could say, with the kings early on. Got a fairly unfortunate with aces, flop with aces, and lost the minimum, which I'm fine with losing the minimum spots like that, to be honest with you. Right hand table, found a few good spots, ran the stack up a bit, which is nice. But again, they're little ones, nothing enormous, just little ones we're chipping away here and there, which again, they all add up. Again, min raising. I mean, there seem to be a lot of players doing this, so I have to assume this is just like a site-wide thing. But yeah, very, very unusual. And as I've said before, accomplishing very, very little. I mean, if someone could like perfectly determine a mathematical reason to do it, then I would have no problem with it. However, many people have gone through the maths, depending on whether you should pot raise pre 3x, 2.5x, etc. And the consensus is that pot raising is the GTO approach. And from my own personal experience, I would absolutely agree with that. I don't think that raising any other size really accomplishes anything else. I mean, it doesn't. You just end up taking more people to the flop. Your probability of you winning decreases, and you just make your life difficult for no real apparent reason. Anyway, a rant about min raising over. Nines, small blind, fold. Pretty self-explanatory. I do see a lot of people like overplaying these small pairs and medium pairs, especially non-suited. Just set mining, and one, there's not an enormous probability that you hit the set, and secondly, the times you do, you're almost certainly not making top set. So it is potentially a trap hand. You are going to, there are reverse implied odds that do come along with a hand like that, and unless your post-flop game is refined enough to be able to fold hands that, fold hands like that, like second set, third set, when significant amount of pressure comes your way, then overall you will be losing more money than you're making on the rare occasions you actually make the set. So it's something I see a lot. It's definitely a transitional thing from Hold'em, where the whole no set no bet. You're quite happy to put a little bit in and attempt to hit your set because you're almost certainly getting paid when you hit it. But there's a lot of pairs floating about in Omaha, so it's a good probability of set over set. Whereas in Hold'em, the times it happens, you just take off the chain. It's very unlikely. In Omaha, it's not common, but it's certainly not uncommon either. I don't really know how that happened, but sure. I think it was limp, to be fair to the guy. Would prefer the hand was suited to the jack or the ace rather than the 9, but it's still reasonable. Butchie does 3-bet, which is going to fold. It's not going to play super well to a 3-bet. I was looking to steal the button. The button has most definitely not been stolen, so nice answer. I will demonstrate my discipline by folding to a 3-bet. Based on what happens typically on this site, you can faint in surprise. Set versus flush draw. Naked flush draw. I mean, fair, I think actually when they got check raised, that's probably mathematically correct, but you are always behind. Although it's really determining whether your opponent has any diamonds in hand, whether Tricky Sticky's managed to fold any diamonds. If they have, then you're really in trouble. Even if you have something like just a gut shot with it, it is going to make a difference, as weird as that sounds. We are going to defend the ace-queen rag here, attempt to flop something decent. That actually is something decent. Bottom pair and a flush draw is not terrible by any stretch. We're going to see what Butchie does here. We do have a queen blocker, 7 straight draws. We're not going to raise pot. Pot is not going to accomplish too much. It kind of screams strength. We're going to put a small raise in and just attempt to milk SoCal. allow his two pairs to continue, allow his weaker flushes to continue. As rivers go, I must confess that is not my favourite. Getting better than 3-1 kind of sucks. My deuce does block some boats. You're going to have some weaker flushes. Like 10-9 is the very obvious full house. But yeah, quads, the other thing. Oh, the plan on the turn was brilliant. The plan on the river was not so brilliant. If he pots it, it's very, very elementary fold. 3-1, it's... Really depends. If I think my opponent is only betting full houses, then I have to fold, but I really don't think that's the case. Anyway, that is going to wrap up this video. We have made a little bit of money. Obviously, that's a somewhat unfortunate river. But anyway, I've been Tom for PokerVIP.com, and I will see you in a bit for another video series.